our COVID issues. And today I'm excited, and I am expecting a lot of the notions I have about this ailment to be knocked off. And so we will start our meeting with a word of prayer and before the prayer, I must say that this meeting was put together by the lay movement of the Methodist Church, Los Angeles, with support from Ghana Association of Southern California. And we thank these two organizations for this effort. Dr. Steve Jesau, can you lead us in opening prayer? You are muted. Actually, today only Isaac can unmute you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this unique occasion. It was 64 years ago that you snatched us from the clutches and exploitations of our Western masters. Just as you did for the people of Israel thousands of years ago, we thank you because you have been gracious and merciful to us. You have given us a fertile land, abundant minerals, resources, and human resources. You deserve our thanksgiving and praises. What we lack right now is the right heart and minds to execute your mandate of 6 days labor. I pray this evening that you prompt us to understand that work is also a form of worship. The Christian reformers who came to the new land had attitude and mindset that there was no difference between secular work and ecclesiastical work. Though Scripture declared that our God works miracles, we are not promised that all of our worldly problems will be solved through supernatural means. You have endowed us with wisdom and have given us understanding. Thus, we therefore supposed to use our minds and our strength to deal with everyday common problems. We therefore pray that, Lord, you will give us a new mindset so we can put up institutions and effective administrative structures that will help us to govern our country. Help us to follow all the COVID-19 protocols and rid the world of this deadly virus. Finally, we pray for an ontological change of mindset. Cause the Christians among us to be exemplars or models for the various places we work. This we ask you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. May we all say amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend Steve. I will introduce Dr. Steve at the right time. At this time, I will want to invite the Society Steward of the Methodist Church, which organized this program, to give us brief remarks. Gadiel, you are muted.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. So on behalf of Wesley Methodist Church, Southern California, we welcome you all to this event. Wesley Methodist Church, Southern California is the only Ghana Methodist Church on the Pacific coast of the US. And as of now, we are trying to expand beyond Los Angeles. And we believe that this, meeting is, we are connecting at the right time, because I found out that, for example, tomorrow, our theme is understanding purpose. And so, as we were told yesterday by Dr. Jesau, God gave the scientists the wisdom and the knowledge to create this virus, to create this vaccine, to create a vaccine. So I believe that today, all our questions and our doubts and everything that we have will be addressed by our panelists who are knowledgeable in their various fields, and also we'll be able to go back home with the knowledge that this vaccine is good, and we should all go ahead and take it. So I'd like to invite you to welcome you one more time. And anytime you want to, if you don't have any place of worship and you're a Methodist and you're in Southern California, please look at my number at the bottom, or you can contact Sister Kate. Her number is also at the bottom of our, what do you call it, flyer. And then you are welcome to join us in worship after this. So thank you very much, and you're all welcome.
Thank you. And may I remind you that we're supposed to be live on Facebook worldwide, and I know there are people in Dominican and in Ghana and all over watching us from whichever avenue that they have access to. At this time, I want to invite the Vice President of the Ghana Association, my girl, Lucille, Mrs. Sarkodie, to give us some brief remarks from the Ghana Association.
Thank you, Ken. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I'm excited and happy Independence Day to our beloved country, Ghana. You know, it has been approximately 1 year since COVID-19 appeared amongst us and changed all our lives. I mean, it changed our lives in ways, tremendous ways that we could not have imagined. We have seen great loss of human life, and we have seen our lifestyles have changed so much. So today, on behalf of Ghana Association, I really want to thank all of you, the Methodist Church, for putting this together. I thank all of the presenters, all of the educators on this panel for your time, your knowledge. And on behalf of Ghana Association, I just want to welcome all of you to this needed roundtable. And I'm hoping that at the end of it, we will be well informed. All of the conspiracy theories out there will all be debunked, and we will get all our questions answered. So on behalf of all of us, I just want to say thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sarkodie. At this time, I would want to invite Dr. Santi, whom I will introduce in the due course, to give us some housekeeping announcements. Tell us what to do, how to ask questions, and go ahead, Dr. Santi. You have muted yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Uncle Ken. And we welcome ourselves to this well-needed platform. As part of our rules, just to keep all things in order, we will be having time for our panelists present brief addresses from their various perspectives in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal is to manage the effects of COVID-19. So we want to see from various angles, directions on how we're going to manage this pandemic as a whole. Then there'll be time that there will be other questions that will be follow-ups for these panelists for them to address. Things that will be troubling us or have been troubling us. We've been seeing a lot of them in social media. We want to have an opportunity to engage those questions head on and see if there are any some evidence supporting some of these issues that we've seen on social media. In order to make things orderly, you can post your questions in the chat box. And Uncle Ken will be going to the chat box from time to time to throw these questions to the panelists so that they address them. I know there will be instances that maybe people will want to ask the questions directly themselves. We will give an opportunity for that, in which case we want you to use the reactions at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand. When you raise your hand, the Zoom will bring you to the front so that we will unmute you and you have the chance to ask your question. But this is an avenue for all of us. So please, let's take good opportunity of it and let's bring out our concerns so that we will all deal with this pandemic together and return to our new normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sante. And right now we are 39 and counting. And
You are muted, Dr. Ken.
I know who was sabotaging me, don't worry. I know. I will be back away in front of me. Okay. My name is Ken Barnes, and I live in Santa Clarita. And allow me to introduce our panelists to you. When I mentioned the name, as I try to project them. The first panelist I will introduce is Dr. Rhoda Anna-Gordon. Dr. Rhoda Anna-Gordon is a Ghanaian public health and research pharmacist with over 10 years of both local and international experience in hospital pharmacy, institutional research, teaching, and population health. She had a B.Pharm from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology and did an MPH in Texas. And he proceeded to do a PhD. She has been awarded for 2 consecutive years the prestigious American Association of University Women's International Fellowship and is currently International Health Sector Counselor of the American Public Health Association. As a team lead at UT Southwestern Medical Center, she has been actively involved in managing various groundbreaking pulmonary and infectious diseases clinical trials, including several COVID-19 clinical trials during the pandemic. The second panelist is Dr. Janet Entry. She's a dietitian. And Dr. Rhoda is a population health pharmacist. Dr. Janet Entry is a dietitian. She's an assistant professor of nutrition and something. It means that she's a dietitian. She's a pharmacist and a registered dietitian. She works at Prairie View AMU University in Texas. She completed her bachelor's in pharmacy at also KNUST in Kumasi, Ghana, her master's in international healthcare management, economics and policy at Milan, Italy, and a PhD in something to do with diets and nutrition. Why are you laughing at me? In Florida University. Very, very smart. And then I have my own Dr. Isaac Asante, PhD. He's a translational scientist who combines expertise from pharmacology, drug development, biomedical engineering to develop novel interventions. Dr. Asante has conducted a lot of trials and medical trials. He has been a clinical investigator and has served on many teams from time to time, including GSK. Currently, he's an assistant professor of research, USC Keck School of Medicine, LA, PhD, clinical and experimental therapeutics, University of Southern California, LA, master in drug regulation and development, University of Southern California, master health professions education in Netherlands, master business administration, tech, and then she also went to tech and did B.Pharm. Then there is our own Dr. Steve Jissa, a Christian apologist, an educator and a philosopher committed to equipping fellow Christians to know God intimately. Stephen has also taught and preached in churches, including the Church of Pentecost, Christ Apostolic Church, the Methodist Church, Assemblies of God, just to mention a few. Stephen has served on an advisory board of African Studies at Loyola International University International Studies, LA. He's now a public school principal in Los Angeles and an associate professor and a pastor at the Solid Foundation Chapel. He is a Bible teacher and has written a lot of articles on the subject. Stephen holds a lot of degrees from Ghana, Canada, and the US, including a Doctor of Education in Organizational Leadership. Stephen's first love, however, is philosophy and theology. And then my own high school mate, Dr. Nana Gansan. He is a partner of a medical practice in Lexington, Kentucky, and a practicing cardiac. What is this word? You medical people, you have big, big, big words. Anesthesiologist. Did I pronounce it right?
Okay.
Yes, you did.
So prior to that, he was an assistant professor and critical care medicine at the University of Kentucky. He trained in Germany and did his residency at Emory University. Then we have our Dr. Annie Walker-Abbey, infectious diseases expert. Dr. Annie Walker-Abbey is a scientific review officer at the Scientific Review Program at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. She pursued postgraduate studies also in Germany in microbiology and micro and molecular biology. Dr. Walker-Abbey then worked as a research scientist at the Biomedical Research Institute here in the US. Then she moved to the Department of Biology, Georgetown University, as an assistant research professor and conducted researches in immunity, malaria in infants, a 5-year-long longitudinal study involving work in field, so many places in Africa and all over the world. And many other more. These are the people we have who will lead us through. And we are very, very grateful to have them. So we will start by wanting to know the origin of this disease, the origin of this virus. And so our first question will go to Nana Daze Gansan.
Okay, please, yes. I want to mention that we have our sister McClinton also on the line.
Oh, our psychologist is here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we have a psychologist also here to tell us about the psychological effect of
I'm a therapist. I'm master's level.
Oh, she's a therapist. And she will tell us and give us the therapy for all that is going on. So Dr. Daze, welcome our sister. Dr. Daze, you will start, set the ball rolling. How did COVID come? Was it made at the lab? Was it as a result of G5 technology? Was it from bats? Was it a punishment from God? And you tell us about some of the damages of COVID. Set it going, and then we go to the other panelists. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, Ken, thanks a lot for the introduction. So COVID-19 is the disease. The virus is SARS-CoV-2 as designated by the WHO. So there's a difference. The disease itself is COVID-19, coronavirus disease 2019, and the virus is SARS-CoV-2. The virus belongs to a group of viruses. There are like 5,000 viruses on the earth. We don't know a lot of them, but it belongs to a group of virus family called the coronavirus family. The first indication, now let me go back. There are coronaviruses that cause the common cold that we've known of for years, since the 60s. that there are some certain coronaviruses that cause the common cold. And we've been living with those coronaviruses for a while. And they, like I said, they cause just the common cold. But starting in 2002, we saw a different kind of coronavirus that caused severe disease and death. And it broke out in China, and it caused an outbreak that luckily didn't cause as much death like we saw with COVID. Viruses mainly live in other animals. So you find them in pigs, you find them in birds, and a lot of them live in bats. And you find a lot of them in the deep forest. So how do they go from where they are into humans? Well, through deforestation, through eating of these animals that we shouldn't be eating, through coming into contact with a carcass of, say, a dead animal that has this virus. So that's how viruses come over into human beings. The famous flu that we know of is found in the bird, and it's from the bird that it got into the humans. It's found in pigs, it's also found, some is found in cattle. So in 2002, due to the behavior of people in the Far East and the way they eat animals and treat some of these animals that really should not be handled that way, the first edition of this SARS, of this coronavirus sprung over. The process is called springing over. Sprung over into humans, caused disease, and luckily it was halted in time. It ran from about 2002 to 2003, and the death was about 800, I think. Then a few years later, in about 2005, another one sprung over from a camel in Saudi Arabia onto a human. They think that that's where it came from, and caused a lot of disease, but not as bad as the first SARS. The one we are dealing with now may have sprung over sometime in November or December of 2019. Now, how do we know it sprung over? Shortly after COVID broke out, a few scientists in California, actually, I think it's at the Scripps Institute, tried to make the virus with the known building blocks that are available for people who do these things. And the computer told them that the virus you want to make, it's not possible. But then they were looking at a structure that was in nature and causing disease. So with the known and available building blocks that's available to scientists, the virus like we have it now, with a binding site and the spike protein cannot be made. So it's nature that gave us that. What they think so far is that this virus jumped over from the bat, may have undergone changes in an intermediate host. And the culprit they think may be the pangolin or not, and then jumped into man. Now, the definite mutation may have occurred in the bat or may have occurred in the human. But whatever the case is, sometime in November of 2019, the Chinese started noticing a weird pneumonia-like condition. The Chinese have a habit of hiding these outbreaks. In 2002, when SARS broke out, there were indications to the WHO monitoring team that there was something going on in China, and they said there was nothing going on. Then a businessman who had been in China flew to Hong Kong, and he infected a bunch of people in the hotel with this outbreak. Another person flew from China to Vietnam and fell sick in a hotel. The doctor who was called to take care of him was a WHO physician. He immediately recognized that this is something different. He called attention to it, got it himself, and died. And that is when the WHO, with the backing of the West, said, we are coming in. So they went into China. The Chinese, what did they do? They bundled up all the sick patients in a bus and drove around town until the inspectors left. In another hospital, they took all the patients and put them in a hotel. So This behavior showed itself also in December of 2019, where they hesitated and hemmed and hawed until this disease broke out. One very important thing that happened was it broke out, it looks like, in a town called Wuhan. Now, they have a very big festival, the Chinese New Year in Wuhan, where they have a potluck. So about 4,000 families come together and share food. And this happened in January 7th or 8th. So you can imagine that this disease has been breaking out. Doctors are calling attention to it. The government says, forget it, there's no human-to-human transmission. And you have a potluck with 4,000 families. And you can imagine how much then the disease spread. So to sort of recap, it wasn't made in the lab. It's something just jumped over. This is not the first time we're going to see it. This is not the first time we have seen it. Ebola jumped over, HIV jumped over, influenza jumped over, the Marburg virus jumped over. So we are going to be seeing this phenomenon of what we call a spring over happen over and over again. As long as we keep deforesting, we keep eating things we shouldn't be eating, we keep denying that these things actually happen, we are going to be seeing this phenomenon over and over again. Now, do I have time to touch on what COVID does to the body real quick?
Yes, you have 7 minutes.
Okay, so
3 more minutes.
So this virus basically enters the body. Viruses have a way of entering the body by looking for what we call receptors. The body uses sort of a lock and key phenomenon for most of its processes, right? So if, say, you take a medicine that is used to treat high blood pressure called the beta blocker, it attaches to a receptor that leads to the blood pressure going down. A lot of processes in the body go with this lock and key phenomenon, where the key is it's the substance or the chemical, and the lock is the receptor. Viruses exploit this lock and key phenomenon, I mean, amazingly well. So they always find a receptor in the human body, they latch to it, and they enter the human body through that. So COVID uses an ACE receptor. So sorry, SARS-CoV-2 uses the ACE2 receptor. What is interesting is this attachment has gotten better with each iteration. So it was good with SARS, it got better with MERS, and it's gotten even more excellent with SARS-CoV-2. These receptors are all over the body, and it enters mostly through your nose and your mouth, through breathing, through coughing, sneezing, and it enters into your lungs initially and causes a pneumonia, but it doesn't stay there. Now, to put it sort of simply, if you were to take your blood vessel and open it up and look at the blood vessel surface, the layer you see is called an endothelium. It's the basis of a lot of the processes that happen in the human body. The virus seems to have a love for this structure. Now, since you have blood vessels in every part of your body, from your head to your toe, you can then imagine that this virus would be able to invade every part of your body, and it does. So we've all heard of the different presentations of COVID, and it doesn't make any sense, but it does. So if you have a virus that is able to attack the endothelium, and the endothelium is everywhere, then of course you're going to see this everywhere. So it can affect the brain. There are reports of what we call encephalopathy, encephalitis, people walking around with foggy, what you call fog brain. There's been cases of some madness with this. It can affect your eyes. So what we call in Ghana, Apollo or conjunctivitis. It of course affects your smell. It affects your taste. So we are coming down from the top, right? In kids, it's been shown to cause inflammation of the tongue. It can affect your lungs, of course. It causes the pneumonia. It causes the very horrible condition called ARDS. It can affect your heart. It causes myocarditis. It causes rhythm problems with your heart. It can affect your pancreas. So people who don't have diabetes are now getting diabetes. People who have diabetes are having it even worse. It can affect your liver. It can affect your kidney. It's probably one of the leading causes of death from COVID, where your kidney basically fails. It affects your blood vessels, and so you form clots everywhere. Another very big cause of the death. Autopsies have shown that was one of the biggest surprises at the start of the pandemic, the clots showing up all over the place. The clots also can appear in your fingers and toes. So you've heard of COVID toes and COVID fingers. It can affect your intestines. People have presented with appendicitis from SARS-CoV-2. There are reports of it affecting men and their manhood and causing erectile dysfunction. And so there are reports of it going across the placenta to affect the baby. So it's a systemic disease. There are viruses that behave like that, but SARS-CoV-2 seems to have perfected it. And it's, well, like I said, a combination of the receptor it uses to enter the human body and probably its predilection for the endothelium, the surface of this blood vessel. And so this is what we are dealing with. One, it's not man-made. Two, it's from human behavior. And three, it invades the body and can cause pretty extensive damage. What is even worrisome is that it also causes what you call autoimmunity. So autoimmune processes are processes where your body is fighting your body. So you are building antibodies to your own body. It is the cause of lupus, which is quite common with Black people. It's the cause of rheumatoid arthritis. It's the cause of a disease called sarcoidosis. And in COVID, it seems to be a veritable party of autoimmunity. And it might be one of the causes of what we call the long haul syndrome, where people recover from COVID and still have symptoms. And so that is what we are dealing with. And that is what people need to be cognizant of. Now, it might not kill as many people as, say, other diseases would, but the damage it does is enough to hold health systems. And you in California have seen that. I often say that if I was to design the perfect virus, this is what I would make. A respiratory virus that is transmitted through the air, from coughing, from talking, a virus that doesn't kill too many people, a virus that is transmitted by people who are asymptomatic, a virus that takes 10 to 14 days to become evident, and a virus that attacks almost every organ in the body and hangs around even after the disease is over. You can't have a worse virus than that. And so I hope this gives sort of a basis for what we are dealing with.
Thank you, Dr. Ganson. We'll come back to you. Based on what you've told us, and since this was organized by a faith-based group, Dr. Steve, is COVID a punishment from God as postulated by many pastors? And should we get information from preachers? And why not?
There's no way that one can know whether COVID is specifically target any group of people or it's a punishment. As a matter of fact, every plague and every pandemic has been considered by humankind as a punishment from the gods. Even those who do not believe in the Judeo-Christian gods believe that plagues and pandemics are caused by the visitation of God. So whether this is caused is a punishment or not, we don't know. All we know is that we live in a fallen world, a world that's been cursed already. And we are so fragile to the extent that we have to know that we live in a world where everything is being cursed. The viruses, the sea, the earth, everything, as Romans tells us in Romans 8, that all of these species and plants on the earth, they are under a curse. and they are looking for a day where they will be redeemed. We have to understand that there have been outbreak in the past. I mean, Christians of past and more recent generation have experienced various kinds of pandemic. The outbreak of the Great Plague in 1347, the London Plague in 1665, the Spanish flu in 1918. Now, when the Black Death occurred, starting in 1346, science didn't yet exist as it does now. To cope with the bubonic plague, people were just relying on superstitions and rumors. And normally we just find scapegoat. The Black Death was widely blamed on Jews, and the advent of COVID has led some people or religious people to point fingers at the gay community. Whether that is true or not, nobody knows. We as humans cannot tell. But what we know is that Christians of the past and present inspire us with demonstration of resilient faith and compassion in the midst of this crisis. As a matter of fact, in ancient Roman times, when the plague struck, it was often the Christians who demonstrated the most humanitarian care towards the sick, and that even the pagan oppressive emperors recognized them. In the era of the Protestant Reformation, when the outbreak, the plague struck in Wittenberg, where Martin Luther was living, he responded that prayer of faith should be offered for God's mercy, along with responsible practices of sanitation, medication, self-quarantine, and social distancing to help stop the spread in love for others. So all these measures that the scientists are talking about, it have been practiced by Christians. Luther recognized the need for prayers, whilst at the same time advising his parishioners to adhere to scientific norms. Now, let me say this as a Christian and as somebody who deals with Christian scholarship. The Bible was written for us as Christians, but the Bible was not written to us. I want to explain that, and I want to make that clear, and everybody needs to understand this, that the Bible was written for us, but it wasn't written to us. And the reason why I'm saying that is that many a times Christians go to the scriptures and take something that was written 2,000 years ago and try to explain them within our present context, not knowing that the historical contents within which those scriptures were written meant different things to different people. One of the areas that I think people have used is the Antichrist. As a matter of fact, the word Antichrist, though people are referred to Revelation, the book of Revelation does not normally emphasize on Antichrist. It is the book of John, the Gospel of John, that talks a lot about Antichrist. And John spoke about Antichrist within the context of the Docetists. And I'll explain who the Docetists were. The Docetists were people who were also Christians, but they were heretics. Now, when Christians talk about heretics, it doesn't mean that they are not Christians. Heretics are Christians who are teaching the scriptures, but they are teaching it different from the orthodox way of interpreting the scripture. And so some of these people, teachers, were going around and saying that if Jesus Christ was God, as the Christian proclaim, and given their Greek background and Platonic ideas, they believe that if something is pure, if something is close to the divine, then it cannot be in the form of a flesh. And therefore, Jesus Christ couldn't have come in the flesh if he was God, as they preached. And so that is what John was dealing with. Now, there are times that people, when they speak about this, I think they're referring also to the book of Revelation, chapter 13, when he talked about the beast. Now, the beast in the book of Revelation, as a matter of fact, you explain or interpret the Bible from other parts of the scriptures. We know from the book of Daniel, chapter 7, 8, 9, that the beasts, these are empires. And Daniel explained them. And so we know that the beast was the Roman emperor at that time. And the Roman emperor, now you talk about the dragon and the beast and the false prophet. Now, most of the things that are used in Revelation is what is called in Christian terminology, paradise. Paradise are something that is created to mimic the real thing, but they are not real. And the apostle was trying to let people understand that though the center of the focus of his book was in Revelation chapter 5, where Christ is shown and given his authority and power, the Roman emperor or emperors at that time will also want to exercise their power prior to the powers and the authority of Jesus Christ. And so when the Bible says in the Revelation chapter 14 that we have received a mark of our Lord in our forehead and on hands, we understand it to be symbolic. Now, if you look at the parody, which is the other side of the gospel, when it talks about the beast, the mark of the beast, we do not interpret it that way. On the other hand, when we look at it from the perspective of Jesus Christ, we interpret it as symbolic, meaning that we worship Christ. And the same way that the book of Revelation was trying to talk about. Now, let me quickly move to whether the mark of the beast 666 is something that can be applied right now. During the biblical time, people used to use numbers to represent certain names or certain words. Now, if they want writing seditious material that they don't want people to read and understand and know who that person is, they will use something called in theology and biblical scholarship, it is called gematria. Gematria is a way of changing numbers into words. And so if you want to write something like Nero Caesar, you can write it as 666. Now, people who have using gematria to translate the number 666, all the best Bible scholars that have done that, they come up with Nero Caesar. And so they understand, and we understand that the 668 number was referring to Nero Caesar. One of those who have read and studied the Roman history, and especially during the time of the beginning of the Christendom, realized that Nero, was just a crazy man. As a matter of fact, he killed his own mother, his wife. He tried several times to kill his own mother using some trick. When it didn't work, he killed the mother physically. So that is the kind of person that, the man that the Bible is talking about, Nero Caesar, is dead and gone long time ago, 2,000 years ago. And yet, I think Christians try to interpret the Bible, trying to use the present day context to explain the number 666. And I think because of the fact that many of us do not have a deeper understanding of the historical background of the biblical or the scriptures, I think many people get deceived by people who do these things.
Thank you. Dr. Steve, we will get back to you. Thank you very much for putting things into perspective. We are very, very much grateful. Dr. Jonathan Chin, you are a dietitian. What is this big deal with the concoctions and mixtures, some foods to boost our immune systems? Ghanaians like sobolo and to fight COVID, and some Nigerian friends, they cut onions and put it all over their houses. And some mix ginger with pineapples, with oranges. And what is it about as it relates to COVID? We are Ghanaians. Tell us, are we doing something good? What is it about?
Okay, thank you so much. Can I share my screen? I have a few slides to share with them. Okay. Is it possible? Okay.
Isaac will help.
Okay, let me do that. Please let me know if you see it. Is everybody able to see?
It's not here yet. Yes, it's here.
Okay. Can everybody see now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So in talking about the role of nutrition with its, the effects that, COVID-19, has on us, we want to look at the immune system and also talk about how nutrition keeps us healthy on the whole. And, it's building the immune system, strengthening the immune system to prevent infectious diseases such as the COVID-19 that we are talking about. And one thing also about healthy nutrition is that it's also able to reduce the development of, diseases, obesity. Obesity is now a disease, it's considered a disease. Able to, prevent development of diabetes, heart diseases. These are diseases that are highly associated with COVID-19 susceptibility, disease severity, and also deaths. Okay. So to make it clear, nutrition is not a cure for COVID-19. By you taking, healthy nutrition, etc., is able to help the prevention of the infection, as I mentioned, and also the severity of the disease if you get infected. So these are the nutrients that I want to talk about here when it comes to nutrition's role in, managing the effects of COVID-19. So up here, you see that these are nutrients with the strongest evidence for immune support. So vitamin C, we all know when anybody gets a cold, they tell them just take vitamin C. So that is something that we all know. Vitamin D is another one, zinc, protein. So these are the four that have the strongest evidence for supporting the immune system. And these other ones are also other nutrients that may also help to, make the immune system strong. So vitamin A, vitamin E, selenium, omega-3 fatty acids, the B vitamins. Then we have something that we call plant phytonutrients. So they are from plant-based foods. So we have, for example, elderberry, we have goji berry, we have turmeric, ginger, garlic, and of course, the sobolo that somebody asked a question about, the roselle plant. So I'm going to talk about that one also specifically because somebody asked a question about it. So what these nutrients do is that they are able to provide antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, and antiviral properties that help the immune system to be able to fight off these infections, including the COVID-19. So that is why it's important to have these nutrients to strengthen the immune system so that you are able to, prevent the infection. And also when you get the infection, prevent the severity of the disease. So here I want us to look at, the food sources of nutrients, the nutrients that I've talked about in the previous slide. So of course, you can tell somebody taking nutrients, but the person might not know what kind of foods do I eat to be able to get those nutrients. So when it comes to vitamin C, we have the oranges, and I always advise people to go for the whole fruits instead of the juices, okay? Because most of the time the juices, they've added sugars, which is also not good, all right? For too much of it is harmful to the body. So the red and green peppers, strawberries, pineapple, black currants, kiwi, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and the apples. With vitamin D, we have the oil fishes, we have the salmon, the mackerel, the sardines, they are all oily fishes. Then we have liver, eggs, fortified foods. So some, for example, milk is fortified with vitamin D. So you can get vitamin D from that. When it comes to zinc, we have the shellfish, we have the meat, and always go for the lean meat, not the red meat. You can eat the red meat, but limit its intake. Cheese, go for the fat-free or the low-fat, options. Then we have grains and seeds. So the grains, the wheat, the oats, all those are grains. Then we have cereals. Of course, I've mentioned already oats. Then we have seeded or whole grain bread. So go for the whole grain instead. I know as Ghanaians, we usually, would want to go for the white bread, okay, the butter bread, the sugar bread, but it's very important that we go for the whole grain because of the fiber that is in it that helps, to not only support the immune system, but also to help prevent some of the chronic diseases. Then we have vitamin A. So you can get it from your milk, from your cheese, the eggs, liver, oily fishes, as I've already mentioned. We also have some cereals that are fortified with it. We can have it from the dark orange or green vegetables, the carrots, the sweet potatoes, the pumpkin, squash, kale, spinach, broccoli, orange fruits, such as apricots, peaches, papaya, mango, cantaloupe, melon. Then we can also have it from cranberries and tomato juice. And I've mentioned it, go for the whole fruits instead of the juices. Then we can have vitamin E coming from many vegetable oils. I will recommend the canola, the olive oils, the sunflower oils, limit the coconut oils and the palm oils because they have more saturated fats. Then we can have it from nuts and seeds, so walnuts, almonds, all these contain vitamin E. Then wheat germ that we find in cereals. Then selenium also can be found in fish, shellfishes, meat, eggs, nuts and seeds, as I've already mentioned, especially Brazil nuts. Then omega-3 fatty acids, we can have it from the oil fishes that I've mentioned, the mackerel, the sardines, the salmon. Then walnuts and also seeds provide those omega-3 fatty acids. Then of course the B vitamins. So the B vitamins, we can get it from the fish, from poultry, from the meat, eggs, shellfish, milk and cheese, whole grains, fortified, cereals, then many vegetables, especially the green leafy vegetables, the lettuce, the, spinach, kale, etc. Then we can also get it from our fruits, from soya beans, from tofu, and from yeast extract. So let's go to the next slide, which is about the plant phytonutrients. Okay, so we have herbs and spices, as I've already mentioned, the elderberry, the turmeric, etc. But my focus here is on the sobolo. I don't know whether, can you see the table clearly?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So we have sobolo, and the sobolo is from the Roussel plant. And as I've mentioned, the plant itself, as you can see in this table, the raw plant, okay, when you take 100 grams of it, you can see it's so much loaded with all these nutrients. And from the previous slide, you realize that we have, the vitamin A here, we have thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, they are all B vitamins. We have vitamin C. Look at how much of it is in just 100 grams of it. So that is 12 milligrams, okay? Then we have the minerals, calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium. So you can see that the plant itself has all these nutrients that we can say can boost the immune system, okay? Then apart from that, we can also have, when you are preparing the drink, you add pineapples, ginger, wentia, which is the grain of psyllium. Then we have some people adding cloves, which is pepper. They add watermelon. So all these are also from the previous slide, fruits that contain these nutrients that boost the immune system. So at the end of the day, the sobolo is, I would say, a nutritious drink, okay? But you should be careful when you're preparing it not to add so much sugar to it. Make sure it is the pineapples and the watermelon, and some people even add dates. Dates is very sweet, and that sweetens the drink up. So don't add too much sugar to it so that you get all the healthy benefits. And another thing about the plant itself is that, look at the potassium. You get 200 milligrams of potassium. So the ratio of potassium to sodium is just 6 milligram over here for sodium. So the plant has also been shown to help with reduction of blood pressure. So that is something that is also beneficial with the plant. All right, so when we talk about all these nutrients, how do we obtain these nutrients? How do we combine our foods to be able to get, all these nutrients and the food sources that we've talked about? It's all about optimal intake of these nutrients through a diverse and well-balanced diet. So when we talk about a well-balanced diet, it is a diet that includes intake of low amounts of sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars, but high intake of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, along with some meat, eggs, dairy products, and oily fishes. Okay, and as you can see here, I've stated that it's a lifestyle. It is not something that you do 1 month and that's it, or you do it 3 months and that's it. It should be a lifestyle. So every day you should make sure that you are having a healthy, well-balanced diet. Very, very important to keep the immune system strong, to help you fight off some of these diseases. Okay, so in helping us to be able to adhere to a well-balanced diet, let's look at this. This is called My Plate. It is the USDA, that is United States Department of Agriculture, dietary guidelines for Americans. And since we are in America, we are Americans, and I believe those who are not in America can also benefit from it because it's a very, very easy tool to use. So in order to get a well-balanced diet, this is called the My Plate, okay? And the My Plate, it used to be called My Pyramid, but the plate, I like the plate better because it is a visual representation of the actual plate that we used to eat. Okay, so the whole concept is that when you have your plate of meal or food, okay, or you have your meal, what you need to make sure is that you have your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, your protein, your dairy at each meal, not just for breakfast and that's it. At each meal, you should have this combination over here. And when you look at the plate, you see that half of it is made up of fruits and vegetables. Ask yourself, when you are eating your bowl of fufu or your bowl of bangkung, do you see these over here? Okay, so that is something that you should be considering. Half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables. Then the quarter, a little bit above the quarter should be grains. Okay, so the grains that is made up of, the maize, the wheat, the rice, and all those, grains that we take in. Then the protein part. Okay, so that is also the other quarter. Then this is the dairy. So what does it mean? When it comes to the fruits, making half, so let's follow the colors that we have over here. When it comes to the fruits, making half of your plate, fruits and veggies. For the fruits, you can choose whole fruits, you can choose pureed fruits, fresh fruits, frozen fruits, dried fruits, or canned fruits that are in 100% juice. And as I've mentioned, I always recommend that you go for the whole fruits instead of the juices. So you can enjoy your fruits, with meals, as snacks or as a dessert, instead of you going for the ice cream or the cakes, the cookies. Go for your fruits as desserts. Okay. Then with the vegetables also, what you need to do, you can add them fresh, frozen, or canned, in salads, in sides and main dishes. Choose a variety of vegetables. Go for carrots, broccoli. I've already mentioned the food sources. Make sure you are varying your fruits, your vegetables every day, not eating the same thing always. Then we have the grains. So for the grains part, half of your grains should be whole grains. Okay, so whole grains means you have to go for the oatmeal, the popcorn, the teff, the quinoa, the millet, the bulgur, the brown rice. When it comes to bread, whole grain bread, crackers, whole grain crackers, spaghetti, noodles, whole grain. So half of your grain should be whole grain. So let's at least cut down or limit the intake of the rice, the white rice, the white bread, etc. And another thing is also to limit the grains that come from, the cakes, the cookies, and the pastries. Then when it comes to the protein, you need to vary your protein. Varying your protein, it should be a mix, that includes seafoods, beans, peas, and lentils, salted nuts and seeds, soy products, eggs, and lean meat and poultry. Another thing that is very important is the red meat, the pork, the beef, the lamb. Make sure we are limiting that and going for the, the lean meat, okay, that I've already mentioned about. And also make sure that your meals are made with beans and have your fish or your seafood twice a week. That is also very, very important. When it comes to the dairy part, we can move from the whole milk, okay, that has a lot of saturated fat, to the low fat or the fat-free milk or yogurt, and that has lesser saturated fat. So you can choose your fat-free milk, your yogurt, your calcium fortified soy milk, and if you are somebody who has lactose intolerance, you can go for the non-dairy foods, okay, so milk, non-dairy milk, for example, the almond, the soy that I've already mentioned. So that is something that you can also look at. Then with the beverages, limiting our sugar sweetened beverages, limiting our intake of saturated fat and sodium, as I've already mentioned in the previous slide. So that is something that we should also, pay attention to. And it's very important. We cannot talk about nutrition without talking about, the water, or keeping ourselves hydrated, making sure that we are exercising, and also having adequate sleep and rest to reduce stress. So to keep yourself hydrated, make sure that you are taking about 8 to 10 cups of water per day, except for maybe when you have, fluid restriction in kidney disease. For exercise, you have to combine it with nutrition to maintain a healthy weight. And the recommended amount is to make sure that you are doing about 30 minutes of exercise per day, at least 5 times a week. All right, so in the week, you should have about 150 minutes of exercise. Then we should also have the adequate sleep, as I've already mentioned, which is about 7 to 8 hours per day, to be able to keep our immune system strong and healthy to prevent these infections. All right, so that concludes my part.
Oh man, thank you very, very much. So Isaac, take us back. That is very, very good to know. So the concussions help, but they don't cure the ailment. My next question is that knowing this, Dr. Isaac Asante, you have been involved in developing drug. You are a pharmaceutical research developer. We have not found cure for cancer and other autoimmune diseases. Yet within 1 year, we have found cure for a vaccine for this. Can the fast-paced development of the vaccine be safe? And some have argued that the vaccine can change my DNA. And then some also say that the fetus of children and other people are being used for the vaccine. What's up with that? Please help educate us on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes, for the question. I guess you've given me a tough question, but let's try to quickly go through this and see how we can, I think because of our time, I will not belabor most of these points, but I'm just quickly taking us through some few slides to give us some quick highlights on some of these questions that Dr. Barnes just mentioned. In drug development process, there are a lot of things that we must consider, especially with regards to COVID-19 vaccine development. The body, as God made it, has a defense system. The defense system of the body is just like how every country has the military to protect that country from invaders. So as we walk about, there are a lot of viruses, bacteria, and all forms of microorganisms in the air that our body tend to battle with them. And that defense system is what helps the body to stay as it is, healthy, and prevent it from getting diseases. But one of the key and important things that we need to consider is, how do you know your enemy? Because if the body is not able to distinguish between which microbe is an enemy and which one is going to help the body, then the body is going to fight everything, including even the ones that are going to protect us. So the body tends to use things to know the enemy from the helpful ones. And one of the things the body uses is maybe the attire or what the person is wearing. Like how the military people will see somebody is like, no, the way you are, you're suspicious. The body also sees some kind of microbes, and based on what they have on their surfaces, we call them surface proteins. The body is able to distinguish between them and know that this is a foreign invader and this other one is part of us. And that recognition that the body uses is what helps the body to keep a memory of the invaders, so that in the future, it becomes easier for the body to fight subsequent invaders. So if the body gets to know that the person who is wearing green is an invader, the next time he sees that green, he starts looking at you suspiciously that maybe you're coming to invade us. And that is how our body defense system tend to operate. In the light of that, let's imagine a scenario where your enemy is coming to you and that enemy is weakened. That enemy is already handcuffed behind. It becomes so easy for you to deal with that enemy and overcome that enemy. And that is the principle behind how vaccine has been developed traditionally. We develop a weakened form of the virus and put them into our bodies. And we ask our bodies to deal with that weakened form. As the body is fighting it, the body has an upper hand over that weakened form of the virus or the enemy. And the body will use the enemy as a training tool to recognize the surface proteins that these microbes or viruses or whatever have. And because it's able to recognize these surface proteins in the future, if a similar enemy comes, it's like, I've seen you before, I know how to overcome you, and I'm going to overcome you. And that is a great way that we train our body to be ready for all these diseases and sicknesses. I know maybe later, Dr. Annie Walker will talk about how vaccines have helped us. But all these developments have been in ways that we have battled a lot of diseases. And great, we are still on the battle and we are doing great with regards to using vaccinations to battle diseases by priming our body to prepare for them. As we are learning how to fight the enemy, there are techniques, as I said earlier, weakening the viruses. But modern technology is teaching us how we can learn to fight the enemy by not necessarily putting a weakened virus into our system. One of these techniques is about asking ourselves to learn what the enemy uses to defeat us, maybe the weapons or the surface proteins that we're talking about. Then we will preemptively manufacture that system in us. Maybe we can manufacture it within our own country, like maybe the US, knowing that maybe Mexico wants to attack us. Mexico is going to use this weapon. So let me develop this weapon and train my soldiers to know how to use this weapon so that in the future, when Mexico is coming in, I'm like, okay, I'm already prepared for you. So our body has a way of trying to manufacture this kind of surface proteins so that if our body knows these surface proteins, the next time the organism is coming, our body is already primed. One of the ways we can let the body know these surface proteins is, as you can see in this diagram, the virus has these surface proteins on there. These proteins are coded. There is a code which is already in us as human beings, that code for every protein in us. And the viruses are no exception. They have these codes that God has already implanted in them that tend to produce that particular protein. So based on the technology and advancement, we are able to know that code. And knowing the code that will develop that particular protein means that we can now synthesize that code in a lab and now put that code into our system and ask our body to use that code to produce that same protein. As a matter of fact, this system, the messenger RNA that we produce, is something that does not go into the nucleus of the cell. The nucleus is where we have our DNA hidden. This messenger RNA is something that goes into our cell inner chamber called cytoplasm, where we have our cell bodies. And there is a special machinery called ribosomes. This machinery takes the messenger RNA, and now they will code for that protein. And that protein will come onto the surface of our human cell. One of those cells will present that protein to our body defense system. And now our body defense system will develop antibodies against that particular protein, so that our body system will be primed, knowing that I am ready for any invader when they come. So this is just by way of saying that instead of putting viruses into us, we don't want to put viruses into us because some people may not be able to overcome those weakened viruses. But rather, I'm putting something that is innate, something that will not infect a person into that person, so that that command will be used to generate a protein that will be seen by our body. And our body, knowing that that protein is not usually a protein I usually see in my body, will start producing a defense system. And that defense system will be used to now defeat the viruses when they come. Is this going to make us mini robots? No. As of now, there's no evidence to say that that coded protein is going to make us mini robots, but rather it's a way that we are trying to overcome our traditional way. Because our traditional way is a bit long, tedious, and also our traditional way, because we're going to make it from viruses, it means that when you are doing controls, when you are manufacturing on a larger scale, it becomes challenging. But if it's synthetic and it's something you can control, then it means that it becomes more reproducible and you can guarantee the safety of that. Why is safety very important? As we are going about developing drugs, there's a lot that goes on into drug development. In fact, drug development may take about 15 years, starting from the discovery up to the point where it is marketed. And pharmaceutical companies invest so much into it. But there is a stage where we do it in animals, rabbits, rats, dogs, pigs, and those other ones, to ensure that the drug is safe. So all those safety parameters that are done in animals need to be put together, presented to the FDA or any regulatory agency. And that agency will certify if it's really safe before the drug is approved to move into clinical trials. So what you see on the right is the phases in clinical trials that we usually take drugs through. There's a phase 1 where we give it to very few people to ask the question, is the drug really safe, as the manufacturer is saying? And that we use just a few people, 20 to 100, and we are asking that same simple question. And that point, you have to show that your drug is really safe, provide that information to the regulatory agency. They will critique that data before they will allow you to move to the next stage, where is the phase 2. Phase 2, the question is different. Phase 2, we are asking the question that after you have told me that your drug is safe, is your drug really effective? Is your vaccine really effective? Is it going to do what you say it will do? And in phase 2, we test that to make sure that the drug which you said is safe is also effective. We don't want you to tell me that taking 2 tablets of your drug is safe. And when you go to phase 2, you go and give them 50 tablets. No. The amount that you said is safe, you must give them the same amount. And let's make sure that it is doing what we say it will do. After phase 2, we move the drug to phase 3. And in phase 3, we are expanding the numbers to larger numbers. In the case of the Pfizer vaccine, they use about 40,000 people. And the 40,000, they're going to use people from different ethnicity, different race, and whatever, to make sure that the drug that you said is safe and effective is going to be similarly safe and effective in a larger population. And that question needs to be answered. And also, you have to provide that information about each and every individual. So if any person gets a side effect, you have to report to regulatory agency. Any severe adverse reaction needs to be reported. And there are these clinical inspectors, there are monitors, there are safety boards that come to review that data. So in the case of the vaccine that we are using right now, it has and effective as they said it is. So for them to report 95% efficacy means that they have been able to do it in that large population of 40,000. And out of the 40,000, if you take any 100 of them, 95 of them were able to get protection from the COVID-19 disease. So when you present that data, now the FDA, knowing that vaccine will take a longer time for us to see response, they will ask you to still do a follow-up. A follow-up means that, yes, you told me that after 6 months, yes, your drug is safe, but follow them up to about 2 years to ensure that really we are still having that safety. And the truth is that within those 2 years, you must guarantee that before they will now give you approval for you to market your drug. So as I've said so far, you see that it goes through rigorous processes. And these rigorous processes are supposed to protect us, the patients, to make sure that what we are taking is really the right thing. And somebody is not getting money just out of it. But in this case, we have a pandemic on our hands. The pandemic is killing people. And the rate at which it's killing people is so fast. So FDA will now sit down and say, okay, people are dying. Should I wait for 2 years? After which, when I approve the drug, majority of the people will be dead. Or should I review the data I have so far and have some level of confidence to say that, okay, so far I haven't seen any problems with this drug. So I will grant emergency authorization for this drug to be used, whilst I will approve it for the market later on. So currently, most of the vaccines we're using, almost the 3 that is registered in the US, are on emergency use authorization. And that means that FDA has a chance to review their data from time to time and say that, okay, from now onwards, I'm not allowing you to use it anymore, or it's good to continue until they have all the 2 years of data. So I would say that so far with what we have, the vaccines have shown to be safe and effective, and they are going to prevent the diseases in majority of the population, some of them in 95% because of their double dose, and some of them at a lower percentage. But at least one thing is clear in all the options that we have, that in all these options, we have protection against severe disease, and deaths are also being avoided. And that is the key thing that is important in this pandemic. Why has that vaccine development gone so fast this time? And why is it that in the past, we are taking too long to get this developed? It's because drug development is very expensive. Right from the time when you start your drug, you may have a lot of these drugs, about 10,000 of drugs. Only one of them may get to approval. And by that time, you would have spent almost close to $500 million. That is not a small amount of money. So every pharmaceutical company will think about, do I have the market to sell these drugs and get my money back? And they will be worried about their investments. So money tend to be the major stumbling block behind the fast pace at which things go. But in this case, it was different because we have the customer, which was the governments, telling them that I'm giving you the money for you to do this production. And if I give you the money, you guys don't have any strings attached. If it fails, it failed. If you succeed, good for us. So if you have a customer which is paying you to do your product, then what stops you? You just give out your best and make sure it's done. So we have private companies and all the people on board coming in to say that we want to solve this problem. And that's how come this has gone so fast. And also, luckily, Ebola brought something to the fore that was so great. When Ebola came in and the challenge was so much, one of the things we tried to develop was the messenger RNA technology. But as at that time, it was not stable because when they injected into our system, it was getting destroyed by the body. So that technology was already available. When this came in, they're like, okay, how can we stabilize this messenger RNA technology of producing vaccines to use to solve this problem? And they were able to put it in lipid nanoparticles that were able to stabilize the drug. And that's how come you see differences in different company drugs. Pfizer one is stored in -80, Moderna one can be stored in -20. It's because each of them is using different nanoparticle technology that is stabilizing their messenger RNAs. But in short, the speed has not compromised anything about the scientific rigor that goes into this development. So we can be sure that we have something that can save us from this pandemic. And also the regulatory agencies are doing their part to make sure that we have a safe and effective one that will help us overcome this problem. Thank you.
Oh, amazing. That is very good to know. God bless you, Isaac. Wabe. God bless you. Allow us to go to Dr. Rhoda and Noah Gordon. Then we will come back to Nana Dazi. I've received some questions here we would ask. Dr. Rhoda, you are what we call population health pharmacist. What should the population know about self-medication and COVID? Is the government tracking us through the vaccines? What is the current state of the vaccine rollout? And can I get my shot very soon? What are the implications of the resistant strains on the vaccine's efficacy? Go ahead, my dear.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ken, and a very warm welcome to everybody once again. So I just shared my screen and I'll quickly go through these slides and hopefully they will be able to answer all the questions that you just put out there. Mm-hmm. So I just run through this since I'm talking like a population health an epidemiologist. I need to talk about the context of our discussion a little bit. And as Dr. Ganser rightly said, as of late December 2019, a mysterious viral pneumonia was identified in Wuhan, China, and started to spread across the country so much that within a very short time, it spread across borders and into every country and every continent. And we know how this virus has been so aggressive. It's even put precedents in hospitals. It's put countries under shutdown and all that. Now, as we speak now, it's March 2021. And this virus is still here. As of today, there have been over 115 million cases of this weird pneumonia-like causing virus. And there have been over 2.5 million deaths overall. In the United States, which is a very serious issue that we are dealing with. So the unfortunate news is that this pandemic has affected communities of color disproportionately. And it's good that we are having this conversation, considering the fact that our audience today is predominantly people of color, like myself. I thought it wise to touch on the topic of inequities related to this pandemic. There are several social determinants of health that tend to affect the impact of this virus. If you can see in the charts right here, we call this like social determinants of health. So for example, poverty, physical environments like smoking exposure, homelessness, race, ethnicity, they can have considerable effects on COVID-19 outcome. So for example, data has it that there are higher rates of infection and mortality or death recorded in population like ours. And this is likely traced to a legacy of cumulative inequities in the social determinants of health. So for example, infection rates are about 3 times higher in people of color or communities of color compared to our white counterparts. Death rates are also about 6 times more predominantly in our kind of communities compared to people of the Caucasian counterparts. But the unfortunate thing is that despite all these inequities that we face as a people, We are also one of the communities that have the lowest uptake of the vaccines. And someone will say that you cannot blame us because in the past we've had issues related to science, where I'm sure some of you know about the Tuskegee trial, that Black men were subjected to placebo when a drug was available. So as people that are usually disproportionately affected by this disease, we should have been the ones that would have jumped at the vaccine, but unfortunately, that is not the case. The good news is that the vaccines are still here, and we have the option to get them. Currently, the US, as you all know, has the Moderna BioNTech, the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and recently we had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. As health experts, most of us know that vaccines are one of the most effective tools for ending a pandemic. So for you to be in a country that you have access to these vaccines free of charge, it is a blessing. And it is something that we all have to embrace so that our lives will come back to normal. The unfortunate thing is, even though these vaccines are here, if we do not take them, then we probably would not end and worldwide, we have had about 172 million doses administered. So as we are all here, we have maybe close to 60 people on this platform. I'm just wondering if you are one of those, because if it's your turn and you've managed to take the vaccine, then it means you care about your community, you are concerned about ending this pandemic. So you may wonder how you can get this vaccine, as Ken rightfully asked in one of the questions. Now, to ensure a streamlined process for the rollouts, the CDC did well to provide these recommendations, as you can see in these phases for distribution. Now, for example, this was because of limited supply or limited availability. So for example, they had to start from people who were at the highest risk. In December, we started with phase 1 rollouts, and that was for healthcare personnel, residents of long-term care facilities, who are usually those who are at high risk should they get this COVID-19 disease. Now they went on to phase 1B, which were frontline essential workers, firefighters, police officers, postal workers, and all that. And then followed by phase 1C, that were people aged between 65 to 74, and then 16 to 64 who have underlying medical conditions like hypertension, diabetes, etc. So if you are in one of these phases, or if you are eligible to be in one of these phases, then it's already your turn. And you have to really jump at the opportunity to get the vaccine. Thankfully, with the rollout of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, we are going to have more available for other people in different levels to be able to get the vaccines. And the good thing is that these vaccine doses are now available in our pharmacies. I don't think anybody here on this platform does not have a pharmacy within a few miles of where they live or where they go to every day of their lives. The only different that I would like to add is that some states may have different criteria for distribution of the vaccine. So for you to know where to get your vaccine and how to get it, it will be good to check your state's vaccine website, and you might be able to get it once you are in that in any of those phases. So I wanted to touch on some special groups because that's another question that came up. The fact is that generally most people are eligible to get this vaccine. However, CDC guidelines that clarify certain special groups and whether or not they can get the vaccine. So for example, if you are pregnant, you can get it for the United States. I know some countries are outrightly saying that pregnant women cannot get the vaccine. But currently, the guidelines from CDC says that if you are pregnant, you may consider taking it after discussing with your personal doctor. So for example, if it's your turn per any of those phases that were laid out and you are pregnant, you can get the vaccine after discussion with your doctor. Let's say I'm pregnant and I'm a frontline worker. I may be in phase 1A. So once it's my turn, even though I'm pregnant, I can discuss and take it. Now, lactating women can also get it, even though there's no safety data currently available. What is known of the mRNA vaccines is that they do not pose risk to breastfeeding infants. So if you have any other questions regarding that, you are able to talk with your doctor as well. But mRNA vaccines, which is the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, do not pose risk to infants per available information. So when it comes to those with weakened immune system, they are also eligible, just that there is the risk of reduced response to the vaccine, in which case, even after you get a vaccine, you have to continue with non-pharmacological preventive measures like masking, social distancing, and all that. But it's most especially important for people with weakened immune system. And the good thing is that when they did the trials, people living with HIV were part of the trial participants. And you know that these are people that already have weakened immune system. So it's good that you know that such people were part of it, and that covers you if you are somebody with a weakened immune system. However, people with allergies, there's a clause there. The recommendation states that you should not get the vaccine if you are allergic to any ingredient contained in the vaccine. So if you are allergic to pets or food or oral medications, that is, if your allergies are unrelated to the vaccines, you can go ahead and get them. Now, if you are allergic to other types of injectable therapy, however, you will need to confirm with your doctor if you are eligible when it's your turn. So yes, Ken, you asked about the variants, and I'm sure a lot of people may be wondering if it's worth getting the vaccines with the emergence of these new variants. And the answer to that is yes. So far, recent studies suggest that the 3 vaccines that have been approved or that have received emergency use authorization in the US are effective against the UK, Brazil, and South Africa variants, which are the main variants that are circulating at this time. The AstraZeneca vaccine, however, did not protect against mild to moderate illness from the South Africa variant, from a small study that was conducted. At this point, we don't have that in the US, but I understand that they had to go ahead and retool the vaccine to be able to take care of these variants. So it's worth noting that even though these are effective now, there might be a time that we may need a booster vaccine. Researchers continue to look or monitor closely these variants to see how much they affect people, whether they cause more severe disease, and any characteristics relating to these variants. But for us to be able to end this pandemic soon, it is important that we all get vaccinated as soon as possible, so as to stop more variants from emerging. So if you are not convinced to get a vaccine, or maybe you are getting close to being convinced to get the vaccine, you may be wondering which vaccine to get. The best answer I can give you is just get a vaccine and be an advocate for curbing this pandemic. At this point, due to limited availability, the best vaccine that we have or that you can have is the one available to you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much, Rhoda. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Our time is not on our side, but bear with us. These are very good and holy information. And Gennaro, don't go. You are quarantined with me today. We have one more expert, Dr. Aniwaka Abe, an infectious diseases expert. And Annie, can you please help us understand these questions? Does the vaccination help in pandemic or infectious diseases control? How long will I have protection after my COVID vaccine? Will mask wearing harm my body? Help answer some of these and many more questions. You are muted. Isaac.
Okay, so now I am, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you all for staying with us for this session. This is really, really nice information, good information from everyone. And I'll just go ahead and without going through my slides in any particular order, I think it's too much even to go through slides. I'll just talk off the head of my, top of my head, looking at my screen here. So I will reinforce all that our panelists so far have said. Everyone has been trying to make a case of take the vaccine, it's good, you don't have any, all the doubts are being quelled, all the myths are being discussed. So I will also just reinforce, take the vaccine. It is very important to do so. I would, to add on to that, I will say, when we are children, or whenever a parent has a child, you go through all the stages of vaccinations for the childhood diseases. We have these vaccines for diphtheria, for influenza, hepatitis A and B, measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis. All of these vaccines work very well. They are working at close to 100%. And we trust them. And they've been working for our kids. And we've seen examples of cases where vaccines were withdrawn from certain communities. Take, for instance, polio in northern Nigeria. When they stopped giving their kids polio because of some religious beliefs, polio crept into that population again. And you saw the effects of it. So I will say that these vaccines are very important. The processes are rigorous, as Dr. Asante has walked us through. FDA is always at your door, looking at what you're doing. The data has to be replicable. So and reproducible in other labs. If you say these are the points which make you get to this efficacy endpoint, if somebody else is to try using the same ingredients in the vaccine, they have to get to the same point of efficacy and the percentages. So we have trust in all these childhood vaccines. So why don't we have, for instance, smallpox? It's been eradicated completely from the surface of the earth, and we have freedom. So in the same way, we should trust these vaccines. Dr. Santi has given us why we should still trust in the COVID-19 vaccines, although they are from mRNA vaccines, which seem to be a new platform, but they're not truly a new platform. These mRNA vaccines, research on that has been going on for years, since the 70s, and the Ebola in West Africa in 2014, and so brought it up again to the forefront. And so they're already there. So we are just patching onto that to improve the vaccine. The resources also, nearly every country, every public, private partnerships, governments have put money and resources into this vaccine. So the pharmaceutical companies are not feeling like they're alone there and they're going to eat their debt if they are not successful. So this is one reason why you should also take the vaccine. Again, some people have said, oh, these vaccines have side effects and so on. The side effects, I'll say, are really, really minimal. You have a little local pain, redness, swelling, a little bit of general fatigue. In a day or two, you're fine and you move on. And believe me, this is way, way better than going on oxygen or even ventilators. So and look at what Dr. Dazi described. The long haulers, we call them, people who have suffered from COVID, luckily did not die, seem to have recovered because they don't have any viruses in their body, but they're still plagued day and night with all kinds of issues. They can't focus very well sometimes. They're very tired. People who are athletes now just climb one flight of stairs and they're tired. They're lying around. They're not as productive as they used to be. So, as he told us, the virus is affecting so many parts of the body because of this ACE2 receptor in our body, where the spike protein on the virus is hooking onto, and the ACE2 receptor is kind of ubiquitous in our bodies everywhere. So all organs have been affected, although this virus, SARS-CoV-2, is supposed to be just a respiratory virus. Now it's become something systemic. You can die from, and you can have all these problems. People are just playing basketball after having COVID. They're fine. They've been, they've come home. They're relaxed. They've gone through everything, and all of a sudden they're somewhere and they get a stroke or something, or they get a cardiac arrest and they're gone. So if you don't want to hang around the whole life with all these little ailments bugging you all the time, so this is also one reason why you should be taking the vaccine. Again, with the issue of the variants, just like the flu vaccine, the viruses and bacteria, and especially viruses, they're very adept. They're very, very good at trying to replicate themselves and to propagate and to make themselves established in the population. So they mutate very, very frequently to be able to go around the body defenses, the decoys in the immune system, as Dr. Asante had also mentioned earlier. So variants will come up, and luckily, as Rhoda just told us, these vaccines are still good. For the 3 vaccines which have been approved for emergency use authorization in the US are still good against those variants. And so if you have a chance, whenever your chance comes, you get your turn, don't pass it by. Take it, because this is going to help you. It will prevent you from getting severe disease, and it will prevent you from dying. So even if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which has only a 72% efficacy, still take it. The AstraZeneca vaccine, even if it's introduced into this country as a 4th vaccine, although it's slightly lower than even the Johnson & Johnson, it will still prevent you from getting severe disease, hospitalization, death, if you were to be infected with a vaccine. So with a virus, sorry. So please take it. The other thing is that we do not have all the data as yet on the protection after you've had a COVID-19 vaccine. All we know is that it will keep you from getting serious illness and from death, and also so you should take it. We don't know how long this protection will last. As Dr. Asante pointed out in his part of this talk, it could take up to about 2 years to collect all the data. This can be phase 4 data in the scheme of things. So we have the phase 1, we have the preclinical phase where you have the testing done in animals, then you have clinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And even after the emergency authorization, we're still dealing with collecting data for phase 4. This will show us how long the protection for this vaccine lasts. But for now, just take it. We don't know about the transmission. If you get this vaccine, would you ever get infected again? There are some anecdotal cases where they do get it, but still it will not be as severe as this. Think of how we take flu vaccines, because the flu virus is always mutating. Every year we have to select certain parts of the flu virus and use that to make the vaccine. So every year scientists are tweaking the vaccines from the year before, or tweaking the whole thing to be able to have the maximum efficacy. We're forging towards a universal flu vaccine, but it's very difficult to get to. We're working on that. So I see this COVID-19 vaccine as something that could be that will be taken annually, depending on what the variants and the mutants are doing. So if we're getting lots of mutations in the spike protein, and the spike protein is the first protein which actually gets in contact with the ACE2 receptor in our bodies. And that, of course, is where the virus is going to change things around. So if we're getting lots of mutations there, it's possible that the virus will be trying to outsmart us one step, but we're also keeping up and changing things. So experts are working very hard to learn more about natural immunity of this vaccine-induced immunity, and all that we need to do. And we need to do this collectively, as Rhoda has pointed out, collective, because if we do not get about 70 to 85% of people taking the vaccine, we will still be in this phase of perpetually it's good to do the public health measures. And as we all see this season, flu has been kind of like non-existent, because we're taking very rigorous methods of public health. We're using our face masks. We are not getting too close to people. We are washing our hands frequently and thoroughly with lots of soap, rubbing all our hands together under the nails, the back of the hands, the thumbs, everywhere, not touching our faces. So we're doing a lot of good things, and we need to continue to do that. All these public health measures, even if you get the vaccines. So once you get one dose, don't think, oh, now I'm free, I can take this mask off and go and have a good time. No, unless everybody, there are 7.8 billion people in the world. As of today, I saw from the data that only about 2.1% of the entire world have received vaccines. In the US today, we are at about 16.2%. 16.2%. Israel seems to be the country which is topmost. And in Israel, about 56.6% of the population has been vaccinated. So they're really way ahead. We are at 16.2. The whole world is just 2.1%. So just think about it. We need 70 to 85% of people in the whole world to take this vaccine. So we all have to be advocates of the vaccine. If these childhood vaccines, which scientists and researchers, so it's not, a politician does not have the entire say on this particular vaccine. Scientists, researchers, physicians, scientists, physicians, everywhere, the experts, and in different parts of the world are controlling what is going on. So one politician cannot maneuver and do things which are bad. We have seen that a lot of our phase 1 vaccinations have gone to our healthcare workers. All of them are still alive, taking good care of us. So why should we doubt? It is true that the government has done bad things in the past with the Tuskegee studies of syphilis in men in the South and so on. And there's some other medical mistrust and government mistrust, but still, we have prevailed and things are going on and people are scrutinizing things more. So please, people of color, let us all be advocates. Don't let this stop you from taking the vaccine when you have a turn to take your vaccine. Vaccines are helpful and they would help us to overcome this disease so we can all go back to normal.
Thank you, Annie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
this is what we call a poconcron, holy, 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 holy. And thank you very, very, very much. The assurance is that it's not politicians leading it, it's scientists who took it themselves. So please don't be worried about it. Somebody has one question. We have one more speaker who will talk to us about the psychology of what is going on and what is going on. Miss Katura McClendon, are you there?
Yes. I've been here listening.
You have, we want to see your pretty face. Where are you?
Right here.
Let me ask you one question and brief. And my question to you is that, what are some of the approaches of maintaining a positive outlook to life during this pandemic? How do I maintain a positive approach?
I think that, okay, so I'll speak personally and then professionally. So personally, I would say my faith in God is what keeps me going. In spite of all of the deaths that we hear about, all of the cases that we hear about, like, I just keep telling myself that God has the final say and he is going to take care of us, even in the midst of our trials and tribulations surrounding it all. We have to trust that his will is what needs to be done, but we will continue to persevere and be able to push through. Also, looking back at past trials and tribulations and remembering when you thought that you weren't going to make it then in those past trials and tribulations, remembering how God got you through that. So it's kind of like this too shall pass, that phrase and that scripture, and how important it is for our mental well-being. And then speaking professionally, it's very important to constantly be, you almost want to be hyper vigilant about your mental health and your mental well-being and how to maintain that. So being attentive to your mental health and your mental well-being. If you notice, basically, when you know, how do you know that there is a problem, like that you might be suffering more than others in terms of mental illness or for example, depression or anxiety around COVID and the pandemic? The way to identify that there might be a problem is if there's any changes in your behavior that you're identifying with. Sleep disturbance. So you know that before the pandemic, you didn't have any issues with sleeping, and now post-pandemic or during pandemic, you are sleeping too much or sleeping too little. Eating is an indication. All of the panelists had very good information on COVID and what we need to know. And I really appreciated sitting here listening, listening to most of it. And so that's important too, the eating. Are you eating too much or eating too little? And like one of the panelists said, what you're eating, your food choices also matter. Another thing that you can pay attention to is if you find yourself not enjoying certain activities that you used to love. So, for example, before the pandemic, I loved working out. Like, you couldn't keep me from the gym. I loved working out. And then when the gym closed, it kind of got me down, and I tried to maintain my regular workout by working out outdoors. And then eventually I kind of just gave up and stopped working out altogether. And so that was an indication for me that there's some lack of motivation there. And I was suffering from a mild grade of depression. our forever First Lady, Miss Michelle Obama, talked about her low Great Depression that she was dealing with as a result of the pandemic, the racial unrest that we're dealing with, also the corruption in the White House and the government. All of these things have a bearing on all of us, I would imagine. Some people are aware of it and some people are not. And then you take that and then you add on, you compound personal issues that may have already existed in your life. You really want to kind of pay attention to how that is affecting your mental health and your mental well-being. I heard a lot of talk about the physical health, the physical side of it, but I am a believer as a licensed marriage and family therapist that if you're not attending to your mental health needs in the same way that you are your physical health needs, to me, you're missing the mark, because they both go hand in hand. Physical health and mental health are one and the same. If your mental health needs are being neglected in some way or another, it is going to affect your physical body and physical condition.
Thank you very, very, very much. That is awesome. This too shall pass. Somebody has a question, and we thank all our panelists so much. And somebody has a question for Dr. Daze. And the question says, Dr. Daze, please explain this luciferase and the code about Bill Gates trying to inject code us and put some code in our system. And then they're putting some Lucifer juice in us. And then other things that are out there, similarly things that are out there. Please go ahead.
Right, I'll try to make it very quick. So Bill and Melinda Gates got involved with healthcare in developing countries. And when they started, they noticed the number of African women, especially, who had so many children. And they thought that the reason African women have a lot of children is because they have so many kids die after birth, so high childhood mortality. And so they thought that if we are able to do good immunization, then so many kids won't die and the women won't have so many children. People told them that the two don't really go hand in hand, and they've come to realize it themselves. They've reduced childhood mortality, but the women are still having a lot of children. Anyway, so with that, people started thinking that Bill Gates' intention was to reduce population in Africa. His intention wasn't that. His intention was to reduce childhood mortality, thinking that it will make women have lesser children. Well, based on this, everything Bill Gates says and does is scrutinized intensely. So sometime last year or two, one problem that has bedeviled public health officials in Africa and other third world countries is that if a child and the mom show up for vaccination and the child is given a shot and is one of, say, 3, the next time the child shows up, the mom may not have the vaccination card. So then the public health officials don't know which vaccine the child got. And so the desire is to have a way of taking this vaccination card out of the equation. Researchers at MIT took quantum dots. Quantum dots are basically what gives LED TVs that brilliant color. They come in different colors, and they are able to store digital information. So they thought, through the experiments, they realized that they could actually embed vaccination information on these quantum dots. These quantum dots could then be implanted under the skin of patients. So if you show up, you could use a scanner, which could just be your smartphone, and you could scan the skin and you would know which vaccine the kid has and which vaccine the kid needs. This was a paper that was put out by researchers from MIT, funded by the Bill Gates Foundation. And all of a sudden, the mark of the beast thing came about, that Bill Gates wants to mark us with the mark of the beast. And that is basically the where this came from. Now, luciferase was discovered by a French chemist back in the 40s or so, and it has been known for a while. Luciferase is basically the enzyme that makes the firefly show those sparks of light in the middle of the night. If you've seen one before, and I'm sure we all seen fireflies. So luciferase is the enzyme that causes that chemical reaction in a firefly. Chemists realize the benefit of that, in that if you, let's say you are trying to find how insulin works in the liver of a patient. So you inject, let's say, insulin into the patient. If that insulin was marked with something that allowed you to track its progress in the body, then you would know when the insulin got to the liver and you would know which cells it's attached to. Luciferase is such a substance. It's attached to chemicals, and then you use a scanner and you scan the progress of this substance that's attached to luciferase, and until it gets to where it's supposed to go. As scientists work to develop these vaccines, and work on these vaccines have been going on even before COVID broke out, because of one, Ebola, because of HIV, and because of what I mentioned earlier, SARS and MERS. So these three diseases have really galvanized the research into vaccines like none other in the last decade. They had to know where these vaccines were going and whether they would go where they want them to go. And luciferase became the substance that they used to mark these vaccines. When these conspiracy theories pick a science paper and they see luciferase in the title, that's enough to set them off. That there's Lucifer in the vaccine. All right. So that's where that also comes from. Now, another conspiracy that's been floating around is to do with digital passports and identity issues. There is a collection of countries that is trying to find a way of digitizing passports so that people who don't really have statehood could even have a way of having an identity internationally. It was fine until Bill Gates got involved. So they combine the mark of the beast with digital passports, and it all makes sense that he wants to mark us. So a lot of these conspiracy theories have their genesis in really harmless things that, if you understand, make them really harmless. The last thing I want to touch on is the whole controversy about body parts in the vaccines. Dr. Asante talked about development of vaccines and testing it in animals. Now, animals can't always be very dependable because one mouse might be very different from another mouse, and the way a drug or a vaccine would work in mouse A would be very different from how it would work in mouse B when you are testing it. Another reason they use animals is that when you give, let's say you take a mouse and you inject it with the coronavirus, and then you capture the virus again, and you inject it again, you capture it again, you inject it again, you capture it again, you inject it again, you change the virus. That was one way of making vaccines. You change the virus, you make it weaker, and then you use it as a vaccine. It's also a way of growing the virus so you can test drugs on them. They found out that instead of using whole animals, you could use cells. So the cell from maybe the placenta, the cell from a kidney, or the cell from a liver, or the cell from lungs. In history, sorry, let me go back. Cells, however, have a certain number of times they can divide until they can't do that anymore. But throughout history, we've had very, very few people whose cells don't do that. One is Henrietta Lacks, the African-American woman whose, I think, cervical cancer cells were taken and used for this, and she was never told. I think there's a movie in the works about that. It's called the HeLa cells. There are also cells from a baby that was aborted in Holland back in the 60s. The cells also don't change, they keep growing. And I think there's a third one. So laboratories around the world have been sharing these cells for research for the longest time. So when people read these studies and they see abort and fetus and cell, they just jump to the conclusion that these cells are in the vaccine. They are not. Some also would use cells from the kidney of a monkey. Some use cells from the lungs to test these viruses. And again, people will read maybe the title of the abstract and see lung fetal tissue, and they jump to that conclusion and create a YouTube video saying that you have this tissue in the virus. The Catholic Church, the Bishops' Conference in the US is a little worried about this. The Pope himself actually released a statement saying that due to the fact that the vaccines are very important for public health issues, ethically, he thinks, or the Vatican thinks, that everyone should get the vaccines that have been made. The other thing is that these aborted babies are so far removed, and the cells being used today are not even the ones that were captured from the baby, that the Vatican has the opinion that for the benefit, everyone should get them. The US Conference of Catholic Bishops, I think it's a little more concerned, going a little more renegade, has maybe congregants who are a little worried about that. But looking at what we are facing as a nation, I think they even qualified their statement that if there's no other vaccine but the Johnson & Johnson one, we should go ahead and get it, because I think the Johnson & Johnson one made more use of these fetal cells than the other vaccines. So in short, this is where some of these conspiracy theories come from.
Thank you, Dr. Dazi. I have two questions here, one for Dr. Steve and one for you, Dr. Dazi. So since you just spoke, I will let you finish. Dr. Dazi, do you have concerns about privacy with the use of quantum dots? Do you anticipate the use of this technology for to track people at its potential?
Now, like I said, this is purely experimental. The paper came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and nobody is using this as we speak. Now, as a physician, I see the benefits as immense. I mean, absolutely immense. You can load drugs into these quantum dots, and they would basically diffuse into the body over a period of time. You can have your medical records in there. You have no idea how hard it is getting medical records on a patient who showed up and you're trying to treat and you don't know anything about them. So as a physician, I see the benefits of that. However, I also see the danger inherent in carrying all your information under your skin. But like I said, this is basically at an experimental stage, and I can see a lot of pushback against this. So I don't see it as something that is going to be instituted in the next few years. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. I think there's a bridge we'll cross when we get there.
Good. Doctor, I have one more question, but 2 more questions now. Dr. Steve, somebody is saying that as a minister, does science research conflict with religion?
Okay, let me say, and I think when Dr. Dazi was speaking, he made mention of the Catholic priest. Understand there's only one Catholic priest in the United States that had concern about the use of fetal tissue, and warned his parishioners not to take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, this issue of the church and the science controversy has come because I think nowadays, after the Reformation, there sprang up a lot of denominations and churches. Many of them do not go back to read about how the church started and how the church fathers have gone through this. Now, let me make this statement, and there are certain statements that I make, and I want everybody to take it home, even if you don't get other things that I say. And I'll put it this way. The Bible is not a scientific book.
Dr. Steve, can you adjust your
Okay, it's okay?
Now we see your face. We will only see your nose downwards.
Okay, it's okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let me make this statement. The Bible is a redemptive book. It is not a scientific book. And I've said this several times in my debate with a lot of people who challenge Christianity. And people who try to make this Bible a science book always get defeated because the Bible is not a science book. Put it another way, the scriptures show us how to go to heaven, but it doesn't explain to us how the heavens goes. In other words, it's not an astronomical book. It's not a science book. Now, I want to explain that the church fathers have always make a distinction, not a distinction, but sometimes some of these things are complementary. For instance, St. Augustine in the 400 BC wrote something like this: there is not one truth for theology and another one for science. At that time, they used to call it natural philosophy. Therefore, we cannot see seeming contradiction under the rug. They must be resolved intellectually by the use of reason. He also said that the doctrine of, he has what he called the doctrine of two books. And he called this book the book of scripture and the book of nature. And said, these are two complementary ways in which God revealed himself to man. Because both books have the same ultimate author, they cannot contradict one another. In other words, you cannot have a science discovery and you go to the Bible and say that, well, the two of them contradict. They have to be resolved. And I'll come back to how some of these things are resolved. Now, key to Augustine's thought then is the doctrine of accommodation. Biblical expressions were accommodated to the understanding of the original audience. In other words, when the Bible was being written, it was written in a way to accommodate the audience. So let me summarize this way, especially when people start talking about the church and the Galileo conflict. The reason why that conflict took place was because people or the church was not taking seriously the admonition by St. Augustine, who says that the biblical expression were accommodated to the understanding of the original audience. Now, if I take a glass of water and I put a stick in it, anybody looking at it with a naked eye will say that the stick is burnt because of refraction. Now, that's the way the person will see it. But does that mean that the stick is really burnt? No. And so when the writers of the scriptures were writing the Bible, looking into the cosmos, they saw that the sun was rather going around because they were looking at it with their naked eyes. Now, when Copernicus looked at it, he saw that it was the other way around. As a matter of fact, Copernicus not only used observations and trials, but he also used theories that have already been developed by earlier church fathers, who probably look at it from Platonic perspective. And they thought that if God is the sun, who is the center, then the light have to be at the center and not the earth. And they deduced from that, and with experimentation, they were able to know that the sun was at the center. Now, when Galileo used the telescope to look at it, he discovered the same thing, but the church have it in the Bible, Psalm 104. And then Joshua also tells us that the earth is at the center because that's the way they saw it. So there are a lot of things that are going on when it comes to biblical interpretation. Unfortunately, ministers in our pulpit are affecting the life and the conscience of so many people, sometimes using psychological manipulation and other social psychological manipulations to inform them. And I think it's up to us as ministers to be able to study the word carefully and to be able to interpret it in a way that our parishioners will be able to read them and not succumb to all these conspiracy theories.
Thank you very, very much, Reverend. And final question, and thank you, participants, for your patience. Dr. Asante, are there other non-vaccine approaches in development?
So much for that question. I will quickly say that there are some efforts to develop other approaches which are not vaccines. And I'm privileged to be part of a group which is trying to work on a barrier system where you may even spray in your nose, or you put like a gel on your nose, and that will trap the viruses and kill them. I know of a group in UK who are doing a similar thing. They are using a chemical from pineapple to develop a formulation like that, which will essentially kill the viruses on contact. So there are other approaches that are in development. And we are hoping that those approaches can go through the phases really quickly and get to the point where we're going to use it. But it's still the same question of when it comes too quick, we're going to judge that it's not safe. So they have to go through the stepwise processes of testing in animals, then going through all these phases I mentioned to make sure that we have a safe product for us to use. So please, in as much as we can't have it both ways, in as much as we need other approaches to go through a safe and rigorous process, we can't ask them to bring it quickly. And let's be patient and let's hope that when these approaches come, even if coronavirus is behind us, we can use some of these approaches in other influenza and other viruses and other things in order to protect us in the future from some of these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, panelists, any final thing, Nana?
I just want to add something to what Dr. Asante said. So we are dealing with a virus, okay? And viruses, like I think Dr. Adi said, viruses mutate, right? So, and when they mutate, like we are seeing, they form variants. And then these variants cause more trouble. So the push should be really for vaccines to stop the viruses from replicating and forming variants. Anything else is just icing on the cake, okay? If you want a good example, look at antibiotics. We have some of the most powerful antibiotics now, and the bacteria have become resistant to them. There are bacteria now in the hospital that no antibiotic can treat, like VRE and MRSA, and I'm sure Dr. Asante can speak to that. So where pathogens are really concerned, vaccines are the best way to go. You stop the virus from spreading and you stop it from mutating and becoming something more dangerous. So it's the importance of vaccines for viral diseases cannot be stressed enough. If we don't want to see a situation where we have HIV-1 with 4 types and one type having 10 subtypes and the 10 subtypes having subtypes, then we really want to stop this outbreak as quickly as we can before we start getting even more variants than the South African, Brazilian, and the UK one, right? So it's good to have all these other drugs, but it's more important to get your shot.
Yeah, I would say that is true also. And also there are lots of antivirals which are being added. I mean, just in case, you know, on top of all the things. So remdesivir, I know NIH, we have really done a lot of work on that. There are other drugs which have been repurposed, the rheumatoid arthritis drugs, some of them are in clinical trials to be repurposed to see if they work, but the vaccines are, I've just finished doing a big review on combating antibacterial resistance bacteria and VRE, all of these MDR bacteria, they're really dangerous. We don't know where we're going anymore with them, because the minute you think you have the best antibiotics, after 2-3 years, the bacteria has designed another way of going around it. It's mutated something. Well, they were in this world before we came. So if we would keep to our half of the earth and not meddle in theirs.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you. We are very much grateful for you for this information. We couldn't have paid you if we had to hire you for 3 hours. I know for one another that we can't pay you. And then also Annie, and then Dr. Asante, and all our speakers, Janet, and all of you. So God bless you so much for coming. And everybody who participated. And as Jesus will say, go and do likewise.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, Dr. Barnes, you did an excellent job also moderating.
I did well, just that your names, your scientific names are too much. I know I'm dead. From here, my wife will be on my case. Any announcements, Isaac? Gadiel, you are muted.
I think the only announcement is that we thank everyone for making it to this one. We will try from time to time to have similar programs, things that are of relevance to all of us. We come to a common table like this to discuss it with the basis of trust to make sure that we have the information out there. So we should be watching out for programs like this. And I think that the Methodist Church will be having a revival in 2 weeks from 19th to 21st. So those who also have chance can join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for what happened. We pray, oh God, that we will be wise. To our faith, we will add knowledge, we will add wisdom. And that we use the wisdom you gave us and the Holy Spirit in us who reminds us of all good things, even to walk in this life. Our prayer is that protect us, O God, and shield us from ill and woes. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We thank you for the speakers. We pray that you bless the work of their hands. Yes, prosper the work of their hands. In Jesus' name, we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
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 Thank you very, very, very much. We are very